the last route. At 1:43 in the morning, Daniel heard someone knocking on the passenger side window of his truck. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Daniel looked over. There was nobody there. His truck was moving at 70 miles per hour. The highway was completely empty. Snow covered the fields on both sides of the road, and the nearest town was more than 30 miles away. Daniel stared at the passenger window for several seconds. Then the knocking came again. 3 knocks, this time from inside the cab. Daniel nearly lost control of the truck. He grabbed the steering wheel with both hands and kept his eyes on the road. "Okay," he whispered. "I'm tired. That's all." He had been driving for almost 10 hours. The delivery was supposed to be simple. Pick up a refrigerated trailer in Wyoming. Drive it across the state. Deliver it to a warehouse before 6 in the morning. Daniel had done routes like this hundreds of times. He wasn't the kind of driver who believed in ghosts. He didn't believe in haunted highways, mysterious hitchhikers, or stories about trucks that appeared in the middle of the night. But he had heard the stories. Every trucker had. There was one story in particular about an old highway called Route 17. According to the older drivers, Route 17 had a stretch of road that disappeared from maps every few years. They called it the Dead Mile. The story said that if you entered the Dead Mile after midnight, you might see another truck. An old blue Freightliner. And if the driver of that truck flashed his headlights 3 times, you were supposed to turn around. Because the truck wasn't looking for company. It was looking for someone to replace its driver. Daniel had laughed the first time he heard the story. That had been 5 years ago. Now he wasn't laughing. He looked at the clock. 1:47 a.m. The knocking stopped. For the next 15 minutes, nothing happened. Daniel turned the radio louder. A country station played quietly through the speakers. He tried to relax. Then the music disappeared. Static filled the cab. Daniel frowned. He reached for the radio. Before he could touch it, a man's voice came through. "Don't take Route 17. Daniel froze. The voice sounded old. Weak, like someone speaking from very far away. Daniel grabbed the microphone. "Who is this?" Static. Then, "Daniel." His stomach tightened. He slowly looked at the CB radio. Nobody on the road knew his name. Nobody had called him. He pressed the microphone. "Who are you?" A long pause. Then the voice answered. "You already know." The transmission ended. Daniel stared at the radio. A minute later, the country station came back. Daniel turned it off. He drove in silence. 20 minutes later, he saw a road sign. Route 17 to 12 miles. Daniel frowned. His GPS wasn't showing Route 17. According to the navigation system, he was supposed to continue straight. He checked his paperwork. The delivery route didn't mention Route 17 either. He kept driving. Then his GPS recalculated. The screen changed. Route 17 recommended. Daniel shook his head. "No." He pressed the screen. The route disappeared. A few seconds later, it came back. Route 17 recommended. He turned the GPS off. The screen stayed on. Daniel unplugged it. Nothing changed. Then the navigation voice spoke. "Turn right in 1 mile." Daniel stared at the screen. The voice wasn't coming from the speakers. It sounded like someone was sitting inside the cab. "Turn right in 1 mile." Daniel looked at the road. 1 mile ahead, a small green sign appeared. Route 17. He drove past it. The navigation system immediately said, "Recalculating." Daniel smiled nervously. "Good." Then the truck's engine suddenly lost power. The speed dropped. 65, 55, 45. Daniel pressed the accelerator. Nothing. The engine began shaking. He looked at the dashboard. No warning lights. No overheating. Nothing. The truck slowed to 30 miles per hour. Then suddenly the engine came back to life. Daniel accelerated. And that's when he realized something. The highway had changed. The road was narrower. There were no lane markings. The trees were much closer. And the snow had completely stopped. Daniel looked behind him. The highway disappeared into darkness. He checked the GPS. The screen showed one word. Route 17. He whispered, "No way." The road sign ahead confirmed it. Route 17. But the sign looked old. Rust covered the metal. The numbers were almost unreadable. Daniel pulled over. He shut off the engine. He grabbed his phone. No signal. He tried again. Nothing. He opened the map. The map couldn't find his location. Daniel stepped outside. The air was strangely warm. There was no wind, no snow, no sound, not even insects. He walked around the truck. Everything looked normal. The trailer doors were locked. The tires were fine. He climbed back into the cab. The moment he closed the door, someone knocked on the passenger window. 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. Daniel didn't move. A man's voice whispered from outside. "Please." Daniel slowly turned his head. There was a face pressed against the passenger window. An old man. His skin was pale. His beard was covered in frost. And his eyes were completely black. Daniel screamed and started the truck. He slammed the gear into drive. The truck accelerated. The face disappeared. Daniel didn't look back. He drove faster and faster. 70, 80, 90. The road twisted through the forest. Then he saw headlights in his mirrors. A truck. Far behind him. Daniel slowed slightly. The truck came closer. It was an old blue Freightliner. Daniel's heart stopped. He knew that truck. He had seen pictures. The truck from the story. The Dead Mile. The old Freightliner flashed its headlights once. Daniel kept driving. It flashed twice. Daniel remembered the story. 3 flashes meant death. The truck flashed its headlights a 3rd time. Daniel looked away. The old truck disappeared. Just like that. No headlights. No engine. Nothing. Daniel pulled over. He was shaking. He reached for the radio. Static. Then the same voice returned. "You shouldn't have come here." Daniel whispered. "Who are you?" "I told you not to take Route 17. Daniel looked at the clock. 2:31 a.m. "How do you know my name?" The voice didn't answer. Instead, it said, "Look at your trailer." Daniel turned around. The trailer doors were open. He was certain he had locked them. Daniel grabbed the flashlight. He stepped outside. The trailer was completely dark. He walked toward it. His hands were shaking. He raised the flashlight. The beam entered the trailer. The cargo was gone. Every box. Every pallet. Everything. The trailer was empty. Daniel stared. What the hell? Then he saw something on the floor. A trucker's wallet. He picked it up. Inside was a driver's license. The name was Michael Carter. Daniel recognized the photograph. It was the same man from the highway. The license said, Michael Carter. Date of birth, 1964. Daniel turned the license over. There was a handwritten message. Delivery never completed. Daniel dropped the wallet. Behind him, the truck horn suddenly blasted. Daniel jumped. He ran back to the cab. The engine was running. The doors were locked. And sitting in the driver's seat was someone else. Daniel stopped. The driver's silhouette was visible through the windshield. A man, wearing an old trucker cap. Daniel couldn't see his face. The man slowly turned his head. Daniel stepped backward. The truck's headlights came on. The man disappeared. Daniel opened the door. The driver's seat was empty. He climbed inside. The radio crackled. Daniel. He didn't answer. Daniel. What? Do you want to know what happened to Michael? Daniel swallowed. Yes. He stopped. Where? Here. Daniel looked through the windshield. The forest surrounded the road. He got out of his truck. Why? Because he heard someone knocking. Daniel closed his eyes. The voice continued. He opened the trailer. Daniel's breathing became heavier. What happened? Silence. Then, he never came back. Daniel stared at the empty road. Who are you? The voice answered. Michael. Daniel's blood went cold. You're dead. A long pause. Not exactly. Suddenly, headlights appeared ahead. A car. Daniel watched as it approached. It was an old police cruiser. The vehicle stopped in front of his truck. A police officer stepped out. Daniel rolled down his window. The officer walked toward him. Evening. Daniel looked at the badge. Officer, I need help. The officer smiled. Of course. Daniel explained everything. The officer listened without interrupting. When Daniel finished, the officer asked, How long have you been driving? About 10 hours. The officer nodded. That's the problem. What? You're tired. Daniel frowned. I know what I saw. The officer looked toward the trailer, then back at Daniel. Do you? Daniel felt uncomfortable. Can you escort me out of here? The officer smiled. Absolutely. He returned to his cruiser. Daniel started the truck. The police car drove ahead. For 20 minutes, Daniel followed. The road seemed normal again. The trees disappeared. The highway widened. The snow returned. Daniel relaxed. He was finally getting out. Then the police car disappeared around a corner. Daniel followed. There was nothing there. No police car. No road. Only the forest. Daniel slammed the brakes. He checked the GPS. Route 17. He checked his phone. No signal. Then he looked at the clock. 3:03 a.m. The radio turned on. Michael's voice whispered, Don't trust the police. Daniel grabbed the microphone. What is happening? The answer came through immediately. You're almost at the end. The end of what? The route. Daniel looked at his paperwork. The delivery address was printed at the top. Red Creek Distribution Center. He had never heard of Red Creek. He checked the address online. No signal. He stared at the paper, then noticed something strange. Under the address was a handwritten line. Deliver before 4 a.m. Daniel checked the clock. 3:04. He looked at the road. A sign appeared ahead. Red Creek 9 miles. Daniel drove. The town appeared suddenly. It was tiny, maybe 50 buildings. Most were abandoned. A gas station stood on the corner. A diner. A motel. A church. Everything was dark. Daniel drove through slowly. Then he saw the distribution center. A large warehouse. The parking lot was empty. The gate was open. Daniel drove inside. The moment the trailer crossed the gate, it slammed shut behind him. Daniel hit the brakes. The truck stopped. He looked around. There was no way out. The warehouse doors opened by themselves. Darkness waited inside. Daniel didn't want to go in, but the GPS said, Destination reached. He turned off the engine. The radio came alive. Take the trailer inside. Michael's voice. Daniel whispered, Why? Because that's where they are. Who? The drivers. Daniel stepped out. He opened the trailer. The cargo was back. Every box. Every pallet. Everything. But there was something else. On top of the first pallet sat dozens of old photographs. Daniel picked one up. It showed a truck. An old Freightliner. He picked up another. Another truck. Another driver. Another. Every photograph showed a different trucker. Then Daniel saw the last photograph. It showed him, standing beside his truck. Daniel dropped it. The photograph had been taken that night. But nobody had been there. He looked at the warehouse. A light turned on. Then another. Then another. A long row of fluorescent lights slowly illuminated the building. Daniel heard footsteps. Hundreds of footsteps. He backed away. Men began appearing between the rows of cargo. Truck drivers. Dozens of them. Some looked young. Some looked old. Some wore uniforms from decades ago. They all stared at Daniel. Nobody spoke. Then an old man stepped forward. Michael. Daniel recognized him immediately. Michael looked exhausted. You're the new driver. Daniel shook his head. No. Michael smiled sadly. I said the same thing. What is this place? The last stop. Why am I here? Michael looked at the trailer. Because you brought the load. Daniel looked at him. What load? Michael pointed toward the boxes. Us. Daniel didn't understand. Michael continued. Every driver who enters Route 17 brings something here. What? The next driver. Daniel backed away. I don't understand. Michael looked toward the warehouse entrance. A blue Freightliner slowly rolled into the building. Its headlights illuminated the drivers. Michael whispered, "That truck has been looking for someone for 28 years. Daniel recognized it. The same truck from the highway. The same truck from the stories. It stopped beside him. The driver's door opened. Nobody was inside. Michael stepped closer to Daniel. You have one chance. To do what? Leave. How? Michael pointed toward a small door at the back of the warehouse. Run. Daniel didn't hesitate. He sprinted. The drivers didn't move. The warehouse seemed endless. Daniel ran between rows of boxes. Behind him, he heard the truck engine start. The blue Freightliner was coming. Daniel reached the door. He grabbed the handle. Locked. He searched his pockets. Nothing. The truck engine grew louder. He looked back. The old Freightliner was rolling toward him. Slowly. Daniel slammed his shoulder against the door. Once. Twice. The door opened. Daniel fell through. He landed on snow. Real snow. Cold air hit his face. He looked around. He was standing beside the highway. His truck was parked 50 yards away. The sun was rising. Daniel checked his watch. 6:12 a.m. He had been missing for more than 3 hours. He ran toward his truck. The trailer was closed. His phone had full signal. He called the police. They arrived 40 minutes later. Daniel told them everything. They searched the area. They found no warehouse, no town, no Route 17, nothing. The police officer who spoke to Daniel said the nearest road was more than 20 miles away. Daniel argued. He showed them the photographs. The police officer looked confused. The photographs were blank. Every single one, except one. The photograph of Daniel. That photograph was still there. The officer turned it over. On the back was a handwritten message. Delivery complete. Daniel never drove at night again. He quit trucking 3 months later. He moved to a small town and found a job working during the day. For a while, everything was normal. Then, almost 1 year later, Daniel received a letter. There was no return address. Inside was a photograph. Daniel stared at it. It showed a highway covered in snow. An old blue Freightliner was parked beside the road. And standing next to it was Michael. But Michael wasn't alone. Beside him stood another man. Daniel. The photograph had been taken from far away. On the back there were 6 words. Thank you for finishing my route. Daniel burned the photograph. He burned the letter. He never told anyone about Route 17 again. But sometimes, late at night, when the roads are empty and snow begins falling, truckers report seeing an old blue Freightliner. It never passes them. It never honks. It simply follows, always at a distance. And if the driver looks in the mirror, the old truck flashes its headlights 3 times. Because according to the oldest truckers, Michael Carter was never the first driver. And Daniel wasn't the last. There is still a road somewhere in the mountains that doesn't appear on any map. There is still a warehouse that doesn't exist. And there is still a truck waiting inside. Waiting for someone to deliver the next load. Waiting for the next driver. So if you're ever driving alone at 2 a.m., and you hear 3 knocks on your passenger window, don't look. Don't stop. And whatever you do, don't answer the radio when someone says your name.